They told you to be humble. They told you to wait your turn. They told you that thinking highly of yourself was arrogance. And while you listened, while you played by their rules and kept yourself small, someone else walked in, took your seat at the table, and never looked back. That is the cost of borrowed belief systems. That is what obedience to other people's comfort zone does to a man's destiny. Welcome to Machiavellian Mind. I am not here to motivate you. Motivation is for people who need to feel good before they act. I am here to rewire the way you see yourself, because the way you think about yourself right now, in this very moment, is either your greatest weapon or the invisible cage you have been living inside your entire life. Most men walk through this world apologizing for their existence, shrinking, hedging, waiting for permission that will never come. Machiavelli understood something the weak never want to admit. The world does not respond to who you are. It responds to who you believe you are. And today, that belief changes. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I move in silence and let my results speak." Number 2, the identity shift. Here is the first truth no one is brave enough to tell you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You have simply been operating under a false identity, one that was carefully installed in you by people who were afraid, consciously or unconsciously, of what you would become if you ever truly saw yourself with clarity. Your parents, your teachers, your environment, your childhood friends who called your ambition pride. They did not always lie to you with malice. Most of them lied to you with love. But understand this without sentiment and without exception. A comfortable lie, no matter how warmly it was delivered, is still a cage. And a cage is a cage whether it is made of iron or of good intentions. Machiavelli wrote that a man must be willing to see the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. Now apply that same ruthless clarity inward. Stop seeing yourself as the man who needs things to go right. Start seeing yourself as the man who makes things go right. That single shift in self-perception is not arrogance. It is not ego. It is the fundamental psychological rewiring that separates the powerful from the permanent spectators of life. The spectators are always watching, always commenting, always waiting for the right moment that never arrives. The powerful man does not wait for the room to validate him. He walks in and becomes the standard by which the room is measured. And here is what makes this so dangerous for the people around you. When you change how you see yourself at the deepest level, you stop being manageable. You stop being predictable. You stop being the man they could count on to shrink when pressure was applied. The world has a system for keeping men in place, and that system depends entirely on you believing you are less than what you are. The moment you stop believing that, the entire system loses its grip. Think of yourself as the architect, never the raw material. Decide your own dimensions, because the world cannot place you where it wants you if you have already decided, with unshakable certainty, exactly where you belong. Number 3, the psychology of self-perception. Let us talk about what dark psychology already knows. What the manipulators, the power brokers, the ones who move silently at the top of every room have always known, and what they pray every single day that you never figure out. Self-perception is not just confidence. It is not just a mindset. It is a signal, a transmitter, a frequency that your entire being broadcasts into every room you enter, every negotiation you sit across, every conversation you engage in, every person who dares to look you directly in the eye. People do not read your resume first. They do not read your credentials, your background, your achievements, or your intentions first. They read you first, and they make a decision, often in under 4 seconds, about whether you are someone to be leveraged or someone to be respected. That decision, made in silence and never spoken aloud, will determine how every interaction with that person unfolds from that moment forward. Here is what makes this even darker. The men who are taken advantage of most in this world are not always the weakest men in the room. They are the men with real ability, real intelligence, real potential, who simply never learned to project the self-image that matches what they are actually capable of. They undersell themselves in salary negotiations. They over-explain themselves in rooms where silence would have served them better. They laugh nervously when they should be sitting still. They ask for permission when they should be making decisions. And the predators in the room, the ones who have studied human behavior with cold precision, they spot this immediately. They do not see a humble man, they see an opportunity. Machiavelli understood that perception is not a vanity, it is a survival tool. The prince who is perceived as strong even before he has proven his strength commands a different reality than the prince who waits for proof to precede his power. You must understand this about yourself. How you see yourself is how you present yourself. How you present yourself is how the world processes you. And how the world processes you determines every door that opens and every door that stays permanently shut. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I am the signal, not the noise." Because that is exactly what you are becoming. Number 4, the cold truth about power. Now we go deeper. And this is where most people will feel uncomfortable, because what I am about to tell you cuts directly against everything the modern world has been conditioning you to believe. Power is not given. It is never granted by committee, never handed down by institutions, never gifted to you because you were loyal, patient, or deserving. Power is assumed. It is claimed. It is taken by the man who decides, in the absolute silence of his own mind, that he is no longer available to live beneath his own potential. And that decision, that cold, quiet, unannounced internal declaration, is where every transformation of consequence in human history has actually begun, not in the boardroom, not on the stage, in the private darkness of a man's own thinking. Here is what the powerful understand that the powerless never want to accept. The world is not a meritocracy. Let that land. The world does not automatically reward the most talented, the most hardworking, the most morally deserving man in the room. It rewards the man who has mastered the art of positioning. It rewards the man who understands that reality is, to a significant degree, a negotiation. And in that negotiation, the man who walks in having already decided his own value, who does not flinch when challenged, who does not collapse when ignored, who does not shrink when the room pushes back, that man consistently walks away with more than the man who simply hoped his effort would speak for itself. Effort is invisible until it is framed by identity. And identity is something you construct deliberately, or it is constructed for you by default. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. People have debated that line for centuries, mostly missing the point entirely. He was not talking about cruelty, he was talking about certainty. A man who is certain, who is unreadable, who cannot be easily predicted or emotionally manipulated, creates a kind of psychological distance that others instinctively respect and, yes, fear. Not fear in the way of terror, fear in the way of weight, the kind of presence that makes people choose their words carefully around you, the kind of stillness that makes a room recalibrate the moment you walk into it. That is not dominance through aggression. That is dominance through self-mastery. And here is the part that will separate the men who watch this and feel inspired from the men who watch this and actually change. Inspiration without application is just entertainment. You have been entertained enough. What you need now is a standard, a non-negotiable internal standard for how you see yourself, how you carry yourself, and what you are willing to accept from the world around you. The man without a standard is a man who can be moved by any wind that blows. The man with an unshakable internal standard becomes the wind itself. Everything around him adjusts. Everything around him reorganizes, not because he demanded it loudly, but because his certainty left the world no other option. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I do not chase, I attract, I do not beg, I become." Say it because you are beginning to understand that this is not philosophy. This is the operating system of every man who has ever built something that could not be ignored. Number 5. the art of becoming untouchable. Let me tell you what untouchable actually means, because the word gets misused constantly by people who think it means invincible, immune to pain, beyond consequence. That is not what it means. Untouchable does not mean nothing can reach you. It means nothing can move you without your permission. It means you have built such a fortified, clearly defined, unshakable sense of who you are and what you stand for, that the chaos of the outside world, the opinions, the betrayals, the setbacks, the noise, all of it crashes against you like water against stone. It does not penetrate, it does not redirect you, it simply falls away, and you remain exactly where you decided to be, exactly who you decided to become. That is the architecture of the untouchable man. Now understand something critical. The world will test this, not once, not twice, continuously, because the world and the people in it are always probing for weakness, always searching for the edge where your confidence ends and your insecurity begins. This is not paranoia. This is the honest observation of human nature that Machiavelli built his entire philosophy upon. People, consciously and unconsciously, push against boundaries to discover whether those boundaries are real or merely decorative. The man who folds under that pressure teaches the world exactly how to handle him. The man who holds, who does not explain himself, who does not over-justify his position, who simply remains unmoved, that man teaches the world something entirely different. He teaches it that there are no edges to find, that the boundary extends as far as the eye can see, and people by nature do not endlessly push against something that shows no sign of yielding. This is where Machiavellianism and Stoicism converge into something extraordinarily powerful. The Stoics taught that the only domain truly under your control is your own mind, your own judgment, your own response to what life places in front of you. Machiavelli taught that the man who masters his external positioning, who understands how power flows and how perception shapes reality, becomes a force that bends circumstance rather than being bent by it. Combine these two philosophies inside a single man, and what you get is something the world rarely sees and never forgets. A man who is internally sovereign and externally strategic. A man who feels everything and is moved by nothing. A man who sees the game being played around him with absolute clarity, chooses his moves with cold precision, and executes without hesitation and without apology. But here is what no one tells you about becoming untouchable. It requires a level of self-honesty that is genuinely painful, because before you can build the fortress, you have to walk through every room of who you currently are, including the dark rooms, the embarrassing rooms, the rooms where your fears live and your excuses were born, and you have to look at all of it without blinking. The man who cannot face himself honestly will never be able to present himself powerfully. The cracks you refuse to examine internally will always find a way to show themselves externally at the worst possible moment, in front of the worst possible audience. Self-awareness is not weakness. It is the foundation upon which every lasting form of power is built. So here is what I am asking you to do. Not tomorrow, not after you feel ready, because that feeling will never come on its own. Right now, begin constructing the version of yourself that you have been postponing. Define with sharp and uncompromising clarity who that man is, how he thinks, how he speaks, what he tolerates and what he does not, where he is going and why nothing will stop him from arriving there. Write it down if you have to. Speak it out loud in the silence of a room where no one can hear you, because the declaration matters, the internal commitment matters. It is the first stone laid in the foundation of the untouchable identity you are building. Every empire in history began not with the first brick placed in a wall, but with the unshakable decision in one man's mind that the wall would be built. You are that man. This is that moment. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I am building something the world is not ready for," because you are, and the world is about to find out. Number 6, silence, strategy, and the power of being misunderstood. Here is something the powerful have known for centuries that the average man has never been taught and will likely spend his entire life without understanding. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not the absence of something. Silence is a weapon. It is arguably the most sophisticated, the most misunderstood, and the most underutilized weapon in the arsenal of any man who is serious about accumulating and protecting his power. The man who has mastered silence has mastered something that most human beings are constitutionally incapable of. Because silence requires the one thing that modern society has been systematically destroying in men for decades: patience, stillness, the ability to sit inside discomfort without immediately reaching for relief through explanation, justification, or the desperate need to be understood by people who were never qualified to understand you in the first place. Let me be direct with you. You have been over-explaining yourself your entire life. You have been justifying your decisions to people who had no authority over your destiny. You have been sharing your vision with individuals whose only qualification was proximity, not wisdom. And every time you opened your mouth to defend who you are or where you are going to someone who never asked in good faith, you leaked power. You handed someone a map to your insecurities. You gave them the exact coordinates of your self-doubt and dressed it up as honesty. Real honesty does not require an audience. Real confidence does not require validation. And real power does not require explanation. The lion does not walk through the jungle announcing his intentions to the other animals. He moves, he acts, and the results speak in a language that requires no translation. Machiavelli was ruthlessly clear on this point. He wrote that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands because everyone can see but few can feel. What this means in the language of power psychology is devastatingly simple. What people see you do matters infinitely more than what you tell them you are going to do. Your words are cheap currency in a world flooded with promises. Your actions, your silence, your stillness, your consistency in the absence of applause. These are the rare currencies that actually hold their value. The man who speaks constantly about his plans is spending power he has not yet earned. The man who moves in silence and allows his results to arrive before his reputation does, that man creates a kind of mystique that no amount of self-promotion can manufacture. And now we must address the part of this that will be the hardest for you to accept. Being misunderstood is not a problem to be solved. It is a price to be paid. Every man who has ever operated at a level above the crowd has been misunderstood by that crowd. They called him arrogant when he was simply certain. They called him cold when he was simply disciplined. They called him antisocial when he was simply selective. They called him lucky when he was simply prepared. The misunderstanding is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you are operating on a frequency that the untrained ear cannot yet receive, and your only obligation in that moment is to remain consistent, to keep building, to keep moving, to refuse with every fiber of your being the temptation to descend to a level of explanation that was designed to make other people comfortable at the expense of your own momentum. Here is the strategic truth that Machiavellian thinkers have applied across boardrooms, battlefields, and every arena of human competition throughout history. Mystery is leverage. The man who is fully known is fully predictable. The man who is fully predictable can be fully managed. But the man who reveals himself selectively, who speaks with intention rather than impulse, who allows people to wonder, to speculate, to fill in the silence with their own imagination, that man holds a psychological advantage that no credential, no title, and no amount of money can purchase outright. You become larger in the minds of others precisely because you have given them so little to work with and so much to contemplate. Scarcity creates value. This applies to commodities, it applies to information, and it applies, with absolute precision, to how much of yourself you choose to reveal to a world that has not yet proven it deserves full access to who you are and what you are becoming. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "My silence is my strategy and my results are my voice." Because from this point forward, you are done explaining yourself to people who were never in a position to understand you anyway. Number 7. The enemy within destroying the version of you that kept you small. Everything we have discussed up to this point, the identity shift, the psychology of self-perception, the cold truth about power, the art of becoming untouchable, the weapon of silence, all of it means absolutely nothing if you refuse to confront the most dangerous adversary you will ever face in your entire life. This enemy does not live outside of you. He does not exist in the people who doubted you, the systems that overlooked you, or the circumstances that were stacked against you. He lives inside you. He has always lived inside you. And he is extraordinarily sophisticated because he does not attack you with aggression. He does not come at you loudly or obviously. He comes at you quietly, reasonably, and often in a voice that sounds frighteningly similar to your own. He is the version of you that kept you small, the version that convinced you to wait, the version that dressed fear up as wisdom and called hesitation careful thinking, the version that whispered you are not ready every single time you stood at the edge of something that could have changed your life. This internal enemy is the product of every limitation ever placed on you that you eventually stopped fighting and started believing. It is the accumulated weight of every time someone told you no, and you accepted that no as a final verdict rather than a temporary obstacle. It is the psychological residue of every failure you experienced and then used as evidence to build a case against your own potential. And here is what makes this enemy so devastatingly effective. He does not need to defeat you in a single battle. He simply needs to delay you long enough that the delay itself becomes your defeat. He needs you to wait one more day, one more month, one more year, until the accumulated weight of waiting has quietly crushed the ambition out of you so completely that you forget it was ever there to begin with. Machiavelli understood that the most catastrophic losses in the arena of power are not the ones inflicted by external enemies. They are the ones that occur when a man becomes his own opposition, when his internal resistance is more powerful than his external drive, when the voice inside that says, "Who are you to want this?" is louder than the voice that says, "I was built for exactly this." The prince who cannot govern himself cannot govern anything else. The man who has not conquered the territories within his own mind will always be conquered by the territories outside of it. This is not metaphor. This is the most practical and applicable truth in the entire philosophy of power. So, what does it actually take to destroy the version of you that kept you small? It takes a decision that is made not with emotion, but with cold, surgical, irreversible finality. It takes the same ruthlessness that Machiavelli prescribed for dealing with external threats, because the internal threat deserves no less. You do not negotiate with the part of you that has been sabotaging your greatness. You do not compromise with it. You do not try to gradually ease it out of your psychology with gentle affirmations and morning routines alone. You identify it with unflinching clarity. You name exactly what it has cost you. You hold it accountable for every opportunity you did not take, every room you did not command, every version of yourself you did not become. And then you make the decision, permanent and non-negotiable, that it no longer has a seat at the table of your mind. You are not that man anymore. You are not the man who shrinks. You are not the man who waits. You are not the man who lets the noise of his own doubt drown out the signal of his own potential. That man is done. That chapter is closed. And what rises in his place is something the world around you is going to have to learn to reckon with entirely. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I have outgrown the version of me that was afraid." Because that statement is not just words, it is a burial, and it is long overdue. Number 8, the Machiavellian standard, how the powerful truly live. Now we arrive at something that most self-improvement content will never take you to, because most self-improvement content is designed to make you feel better, not to make you more effective. And there is a profound and consequential difference between those two things. Feeling better is temporary. Being more effective is structural. Feeling better requires external stimulation, a motivational video, an inspiring quote, a moment of emotional elevation that fades by Tuesday morning. Being more effective requires something far less comfortable and far more permanent. It requires the adoption of a standard, not a goal, not a vision board, not an affirmation, a standard. And understanding the difference between a goal and a standard is one of the most important cognitive shifts you will ever make in your pursuit of genuine, lasting, unshakable power. A goal is something you reach for. A standard is something you refuse to fall below. A goal exists in the future, which means it is always at a distance, always slightly out of reach, always dependent on circumstances aligning in your favor. A standard exists right now, in this moment, in every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, every situation you choose to engage with or walk away from. The powerful man does not wake up every morning chasing a goal. He wakes up every morning maintaining a standard, and that standard governs everything. How he spends his time, who he allows into his inner circle, what conversations he participates in, what energy he tolerates in his environment, what he is willing to accept from others, and more importantly, what he is willing to accept from himself. The standard is the architecture of his entire existence, and it is non-negotiable in a way that goals simply never are. Machiavelli observed that the greatest leaders in history were not the most talented men of their era. They were the men who held the highest standards for themselves and then created environments, alliances, and systems that enforced those standards relentlessly. They understood that talent without discipline is potential that never matures, that intelligence without direction is energy that dissipates, that ambition without a governing standard is a fire that burns everything, including the man who lit it. The Machiavellian standard is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is about the absolute refusal to drift, the refusal to let a bad week become a bad month, the refusal to let one compromise open the door to a cascade of compromises that slowly dismantle everything you have built inside yourself. Here is what living by a Machiavellian standard actually looks like in practice, stripped of all romanticism and delivered with the cold clarity this philosophy demands. It means you are the hardest person in your own life to satisfy. It means you hold yourself to a level of accountability that you would never need to impose on others because you impose it on yourself first and without mercy. It means that mediocrity is not a phase you pass through on the way to greatness. It is an identity you reject so completely that it no longer feels like an option. It means you build your day, your relationships, your decisions, and your environment around the man you are becoming rather than the man you have been. And it means you do this consistently, quietly, without applause, without an audience, and without the need for anyone to acknowledge the weight of what you are carrying or the discipline it takes to carry it with grace. Because here is the final and most powerful truth about the Machiavellian standard: the world will eventually reflect it back to you. Not immediately, not on your preferred timeline, but inevitably, because the world, despite all its chaos and its apparent randomness, is in fact deeply responsive to the internal standards of the men who move through it with conviction. When you raise your standard, you raise the quality of everything that is able to reach you. You raise the quality of the opportunities that find you, the people who are drawn to you, the results that begin to accumulate around you. The world does not rearrange itself for the man who wishes things were different. It rearranges itself slowly and then all at once for the man who has decided, at the level of identity, at the level of standard, at the level of non-negotiable internal law, exactly who he is and exactly what he will and will not accept from life. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "My standard is my identity and my identity is untouchable." Because that is not a statement about where you are going. That is a declaration about who you already are. Number 9. The world rearranges itself when everything begins to shift. This is the part where everything we have built across this entire conversation converges into a single, undeniable truth. The truth that the title of this video pointed toward from the very beginning. The truth that Machiavelli understood, that the Stoics understood, that every man who has ever risen from obscurity to consequence has discovered, not through inspiration, but through lived and often painful experience. When you genuinely, fundamentally, and irreversibly change the way you think about yourself, the world does not just respond, It rearranges, not metaphorically, not poetically, structurally. The actual concrete reality of your daily life begins to reorganize itself around the new frequency you are broadcasting. The opportunities that were always present but invisible to your old identity suddenly become visible. The people who belong in your next chapter begin appearing while the ones who belonged in your last chapter naturally begin to fall away. The doors that seemed permanently closed reveal themselves to have simply been waiting for a knock from a man who believed he had the right to enter. Understand what is actually happening when this shift occurs. It is not magic. It is not the universe conspiring romantically on your behalf. It is something far more precise and far more powerful than that. It is the mechanical, inevitable consequence of a man operating from a new and higher internal reference point. When your self-perception changes, your behavior changes. When your behavior changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your actions change. And when your actions change, with enough consistency, enough conviction, and enough cold strategic intention behind them, your results change. And changed results, compounded over time, produce a changed reality. This is not mysticism. This is the physics of personal power applied with Machiavellian precision. But here is what you must understand about this rearrangement. It will not always feel like reward in the early stages. Sometimes it will feel like loss. People will exit your life who cannot match your new standard. Situations you once tolerated will become unbearable because your identity has outgrown them. Comfort zones that once felt safe will begin to feel like suffocation because the man you are becoming cannot breathe in the spaces the old you was content to inhabit. Do not mistake this discomfort for failure. It is not failure. It is friction. It is the necessary resistance that accompanies every genuine transformation of consequence. The snake does not mourn the skin it sheds. It moves forward, new and unburdened, into territory it could not have accessed before. You are in that process right now. The shedding is not the end. It is the beginning of the version of you that the world is about to meet for the very first time. Number 10. The final decree. Become what the world cannot ignore. This is where it ends, and this is where you begin. Everything you have heard across these 9 parts was not philosophy for the sake of philosophy. It was not intellectual exercise or motivational decoration. It was a dismantling, a deliberate, surgical dismantling of every false belief, every borrowed limitation, every comfortable lie that has been standing between you and the version of yourself that was always meant to exist. You came into this video as one man. If you were truly listening, if you allowed every word to land where it was aimed, you are leaving as something different, something sharper, something quieter, something that the world is going to have to reckon with on entirely new terms. Machiavelli did not write for the masses. He wrote for the man who was ready, the man who could handle the cold truth, delivered without sentiment, without softening, without the warm padding of false comfort. That man is you. That has always been you. The only thing that ever stood between you and your own power was the way you chose to think about yourself. And now that choice has changed. The thinking has changed. And as we have established, with cold and unshakable certainty, when the thinking changes, the world rearranges itself accordingly. So go now, move in silence, build without announcing, rise without permission, and become so undeniably, so completely, so powerfully yourself that the world has absolutely no choice but to make room for you. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I think differently now." The world will feel it. Because it will. If this video reached something real inside you, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. The next lesson is already waiting, and so is the next version of you.